This Late Night Linux Family podcast is made possible by our patrons. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can join them. Support us on Patreon for access to ad-free episodes and early releases. That's latenightlinux.com/support. Hello and welcome to episode 120 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm May.
Welcome back all. Chris, you have never owned a Mac before until you changed jobs recently and they gave you one.
Yes, correct. Although it wasn't forced upon me, but I consulted this group of fine computer enthusiasts and said, they've given me a choice of Windows or Mac.
And the obvious answer was you take the Mac.
I wavered. There was a slim chance of a Linux machine, but managed with nobody else on my team running Linux. I've come from a job where we all ran Linux, self-managed, and it was fine. But to try and insert yourself into a corporate IT policy and be like the one person on the floor running Linux and expecting support with everything, yes, I decided not to do that. There's also a lot more AV in my new job, so I need a machine that is going to plug in and work. The last Linux laptop I had in my old job, the webcam didn't work at all.
So it's quite a novelty to have one that does work now then.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I use a USB webcam at home when I'm docked, but yes, I had like an Intel IP6 or something webcam, wasn't supported even with bleeding edge kernels, DKMS. It was still not working when I handed the laptop back. So that was fun. So I thought, I'm not doing that if I actually have to make a lot more calls.
So what Mac did they give you then?
I have an M4 Macbook Air with 16 gigabytes of RAM and half a terabyte of storage.
So just the base model.
So it's basically the lowest end Mac laptop you can get apart from the Neo.
Yes, exactly. To add spice, I do not have sudo or root.
Oh,
What?
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, there's no homebrew on this machine. It's fully managed and I don't have even an Apple account. Now that's good, actually.
So what have you done? Linux VM?
Partly. So I work in high performance computing. Put down your laptop, everyone that uses Nix on Macs. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use it. A, I'm not learning your shitty configuration language. Piss off out of here. B, fuck off with your weapons, all right? Leave me alone. I'm not running it. You can send emails in as much as you like. Fuck off, okay?
In which Chris alienates the audience.
Yeah, there you go. So I use a highly unproblematically named piece of software called SPAC instead. So part of that is because for my job, I also have to use SPAC. SPAC is a package manager that's not that dissimilar to Geeks or Nix. And yes, Nix is better. Well done. Congratulations. But it's what I use for my job, so I'm much more familiar with it. I built a whole stack of software in my old job using it. And basically, you write declarative YAML config, and then it's Python wrappers for compiling from source, designed for high-performance computing clusters where you don't have root access. So I've installed quite a lot of software like that into my home directory. And because it uses RPath, the ELF binary headers actually encode where the shared libraries live. So you can just create a symlink and you don't need environment variables. You don't need to export LD library path. The binaries just work. So that gives me loads of software that was missing.
What kind of thing?
Stupid stuff like htop, which is just not there. Like a whole bunch of core utils, which you would expect to be on macOS and aren't there. So that gives me some of the bare metal stuff. I do run a Linux VM, in fact, multiple Linux VMs to get around things. I started with something called OrbStack, but it feels like Silicon Valley trying to sell me open source things. So I didn't like that. And then it was a free trial. It was because all the apps are managed that you don't compile from source or get pre-compiled binaries. Because a lot of GitHub repositories, they pre-compile Darwin binaries. So you can pull them down. You can get Rust, you can get Go. So you can compile Rust and Go projects into binaries that just run from your home directory. So yes, broadly, it took me a good few weeks to get my sort of working environment day to day running.
What about the Python stuff you were learning? Can you do that?
Yes, but that's a bit of a sore point because I'm used to using something called environment modules as well. So they're kind of loadable modules that modify environment variables like path and LD library path when you need to. And I have a module that loads Miniforge, and I also have UV installed. Now, here's the problem, right? This isn't even a problem for Mac. This is a problem for open source. Miniforge is a descendant of Anaconda because Anaconda is now Anaconda Incorporated. And if you use their channels, so think of that like repositories, I guess, you can breach the license and get sued. They've gone Oracle. So Miniforge is a project that lets you use Conda and Mamba, which are the package managing binaries for Python, but only using the Conda Forge repository, which is community run. And in fact, you deliberately disable the Anaconda Inc. packages. Anaconda Inc. is still used really widely, and I don't think a lot of people realize that they have to be very careful if they use those channels and it's proven that it's for commercial gain, they will get invoiced.
Right.
UV is worse. So I love it. It's embedded itself in so many projects. It's incredibly fast. I've been using it for about a year in my old job, and it's a Rust implementation of Python package management. So it's almost drop-in for pip, but it's not a full drop-in, but you do UV pip install. It has UVX, which is a bit like pipx, but everything's really fast. The caching is brilliant. It's brilliant, 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 brilliant.
And OpenAI bought it.
Well, exactly. If you recall, May, Gary, and Joe, I talked about it in our chat about 6 months ago, and I put a blog post in there saying it is brilliant. And the blog post author said, yeah, people are concerned. There's this company Astral that run it, and they're a bit sort of, they seem like they're searching for a product. The license isn't clear, but I'm sure we'll be fine. And I said, who has ever said that and been wrong? And yes, May, you're right. Sam fucking Altman has bought Astral out. But the problem is, I literally, in my new job today, I'm talking about standing things up. I'm going to open source projects. I'm going to read the docs for them. Recommended installation method is UV. UV tool, UVX, UV environment. It is literally the de facto number one Python package manager because it's so good. So I'm very angry about that. But I am using it because it's still good. But I am now, I'm not using OrbStack. I'm using a combination of Lemur and CoLemur, which gives me things like Docker and Podman should I need them. But something to be aware of with Apple Silicon Macs is, I mean, I don't have sudo anyway, but when you install Docker Desktop or Podman Desktop, they are just VMs. So CoLemur and Lemur are lightweight implementations of those that you can write YAML config files for spinning up and spinning down virtual machines very, very quickly. So that kind of covers all the bases.
What about UTM? Have you got access to that for VMs?
Yep. So I'm using that too. And here's the fun part of a Linux After Dark throwback. I don't have root access for managing network interfaces. UTM uses QEMU or Apple Virtualization Framework. And there's pros and cons to both. Apple Virtualization's faster. QEMU has more features. But I can't just fly around messing with network interfaces because there's a padlock when I go into the network config and I can't change that. So I thought, how am I going to get around this and still keep the performance? So I'm nesting virtualization. So when I need a cluster of virtual machines where I can manage the networking at the KVM libvirt level, I run an AArch64 Debian VM, install libvirt in that, and then I virtualize machines. And it all comes back to running MorphOS 4 levels down, whenever it was, like a year ago. Here's the praise bit. The chip is incredibly good inside this machine. There's no fan, and it can handle all of this. I wish I had 32 gigs of RAM, and I'll probably press for that if I refresh my hardware, because you can't get around that. but the Apple Silicon chip is everything that you think it would be under those circumstances.
What, no chugging, no slowdown, just everything works perfectly.
Now, bear in mind, I'm not running a full like GNOME desktop in each level, and I've not gone to 4. But yes, if I did this on any laptop I've had in the past, spin up a VM to spin up libvirt to spin up VMs in an HPC cluster staging environment, it would be a shit show. First, it would be slow and chuggy, but also the laptop would start screaming its fans. Like, there is no fan in this, and it's as thin as an iPad on the keyboard side. So that is a big selling point.
You aren't burning your legs or anything?
I wouldn't want to keep it on my legs when I'm right in the deep part of that. But bearing in mind, I've gone from a job where we had a large HPC cluster setup that had been running the same way for years into a role where we're building a new one. So everything is proof of concept at the moment. So it's not running compute in earnest. It's architectural proof of concept demonstrations and choices and things that we're running through. So yeah, it does get hot when you do that. And I managed to install something called MacMon, which looks like a Pip-Boy from Fallout. It's a Rust project, but it's a 4-pane top type thing, which has like the E cores, the P cores, the GPU utilization, the RAM, the swap in a kind of graphable, and the default color is literally Fallout 3 era green against black. So that's very cool. But it does get hot. It records the temperature in that interface as well.
So what about ZSH or Z Shell? That must drive you up the wall.
Do you know what? I've embraced it to a degree. Now, when I'm working in a Linux VM, I go back to Bash. I've not gone that far. But I've installed a terminal application called Ghosty, which is, or Ghost TTY, I guess would be more accurate, which is Mitchell Hashimoto's application. You can now install it on Linux as well. And I was able to just pull that down and drop it into my path on Mac. So, I mean, the keyboard layout is different as well. So yes, the first 3 days, there was a lot of swearing because I was like, no, I didn't want to jump desktops. I wanted to jump to the end of this word with the arrow key and that kind of thing. And also exporting path in ZSH, RC, and all of these things. But I was very much following the defaults a king strategy, because you can change your shell to bash.
For now.
But they've made the default ZSH, so I'm using it.
Yeah, the keyboard layout is a very UK-specific Mac problem. As in, the British English Mac keyboard layout is not a standard British English keyboard layout.
It is not, is it? No.
Shift 2's at, isn't it?
Shift 2 is at, and Shift, whatever, single quote is quotes rather than at.
Yeah.
And that is very annoying to start with. Backslash is also in the wrong place. There's a bunch of stuff.
Tilde is bottom left. Yeah, it's all over the place, to be honest.
I'm looking at a US English keyboard and going, yeah, that all sounds right.
Yeah, that all does sound right. But then imagine that with a tall enter key.
Oh.
Like a proper enter key.
Proper one, not your rubbish American one.
And it all gets very annoying because it's like a weird hybrid between a US and a British English keyboard.
Yeah.
It's very, very irritating to get used to. It means that stuff like my Logitech keyboard that I use has Windows/Linux and Apple key markings on it. So all of the keys, or certainly a lot of the modifier keys, have these 4 keys with tildes between them.
And also, Joe, this will probably annoy you. The old adage with the first Apple Silicon Macs is that you couldn't dock to more than one monitor. Is that right?
Yes, with the M1, you could only do one external display, M2, one external display, but M3 onwards could do 2 external displays with the lid closed.
Right. I can do 3 at my office, but only if I sit at the right desk.
So have they got a display link dock?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that's just doing virtual display and then screen recording it and outputting it to a monitor.
Oh, my God.
So it's all software driven. DisplayLink is a trash nightmare.
Well, I came across them before in my old workplace because our Linux laptops, which all of my team had, would not work with DisplayLink very well at all. There were ways to shim support in, but it was never very reliable. And they replaced the entire fleet of docks and monitors for genuine daisy-chained DisplayPort dual display that you'd USB-C into and present on Linux as 3 displays. I never used a Mac there.
The one cable dream.
Yeah, well, indeed. So if I don't book my desk quickly enough because it's hot seating, then I have to be 2-screen pauper, basically.
Well, let me tell you, Chris, that daisy-chained DisplayPort display setup would also not work on your Mac.
Oh, lovely.
Because Apple have refused to implement DisplayLink dual display daisy chaining support, whatever it's called, in macOS.
Fantastic.
The M4 does natively support 2 external displays with the internal display on. So it's not that's not your problem.
Yeah, but it would only do that if you had a cable from each display. You couldn't daisy chain them.
Yes, that's right, Gary, because I was researching this before I realized what was happening. So you have to use 2 separate plugged up displays for it to work.
Yes, correct. The way I get around this when I dock my work laptop is that I have the Type-C from the monitor for the primary display, which does the charging, and then I have a DisplayPort to Type-C cable for the second monitor. But that does mean that both of the ports on the work laptop are taken up, which is a little bit irritating.
Now, as we went to air, Joe said, I just hate macOS. And Gary said, nobody here is going to say that they like macOS.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's Fisher-Price OS.
This is the thing, okay? I have never used macOS as a daily driver. So I've not come before this liquid arse, liquid glass, whatever the hell is going on, paradigm that is currently being run. So it's not really pissing me off that much. There are too many notifications, way too many notifications. But other than that, I'm not angered by it, really.
Have you not noticed that Finder is the worst file manager in the world, in the history of computing?
But I'm just using the CLI most of the times.
Right. Fine.
I will agree, Joe. If I used it more, I would hate it, but I don't really. Not in earnest. Not enough for it to anger me, really. I mean, increasingly as my job develops as well, and as we build up the actual compute cluster that we're building, it is just going to be a very fancy terminal for that side of things. Obviously, the meetings and the AV, and that's essentially why I came to peace with the idea of having it, because I essentially want rock solid AV and a portal to everything else, which I can do with local VMs. And then increasingly in a kind of hybrid cloud setup, I'll be logging into Linux machines and it will be very, very familiar.
Yeah. I mean, Joe, you've long laughed at me for not doing any work on my actual computer, and that's why I can get away with running a Core 2 Duo. But I think that is a habit I've developed through daily driving a Mac for most of the last 20 years, is that if I want something that has a bit more flexibility or something where I can run real commands, I just have a jump box that I use for that. I've got a Fedora jump box sitting in a VM on a sofa in my garage, and that's the machine that I use to run Git on. It's the machine I use to build software on, and my Mac is just a gateway to that massive over-provisioned VM that sits in the garage, and that's fine.
But you could have that on your laptop if you use GNU/Linux.
Sure, but I also couldn't have a GNU/Linux laptop that was completely silent with 10 hours of battery life, where the webcam worked, where the speakers were excellent, where the microphone was good, that I could literally use on a UK to West Coast US flight and edit audio and video on and not even think about plugging in. That's just not a thing I could do.
Before we started this recording, I have the Mac on a bed because it's fanless, and I was spinning up without it plugged in that cluster of nested virtualized VMs, because there is no idea that you unplug and it changes the profile of the CPU in that dramatic way. And the battery didn't run down, even though if you were looking at the monitoring for it, it was going hell for leather. That's the killer feature for me. And I said it conceptually for ages because I'd never used one, but that combined with the vertical integration of the OS and the fact that it swaps to incredibly fast NVMe when you run out of RAM, you might hate the Fisher-Price nature of the OS, but because it's not getting in my way that much, I have to carry this thing in when I commute. I have to carry it around. I'm not always near a charger. These are huge gains. I would dearly love to have that on Linux. And yes, I know that supposedly the latest Intel machines are getting there or whatever, but the manufacturers are partnering with a dickhead, and I don't want to hear about that either. So don't email me about that either.
Well, let's end with my two favorite things about macOS, right? And my M1 MacBook Air. The first one is I really love how it lies to me about how much battery is left. It just straight up lies. Like, it'll tell you it's at 67%, and then you look in coconut battery and it's like, I don't know, 63. And yeah, okay, cool. I love those. I love being gaslit about the actual charge of my battery. That's great. And I also love that when I turn it on and I get to the login screen and I bash my password out really quickly, it doesn't register. Because it shows me the login screen, it shows me the box where I'm going to type it, but it's not ready. And I love that frustration of putting it in and then, oh, right, it's not ready. Okay, now it's ready, put it in the second time. That's my real favorite bit of using that Mac.
Here's something interesting about input devices on Macs. The touchpad requires the operating system. So if the operating system has a burp and you smash the touchpad, the clicks don't register. And then when the operating system catches up, it machine guns all the clicks into the operating system.
Yeah, because the touchpad is just like a vibrate motor to click.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And also I have noticed from time to time, because I dock and then I use external mechanical keyboards, I have noticed sometimes, and I did update the firmware on my keyboard, which did help, sometimes the typing gets gummed up when the operating system is doing certain things. So I feel like I'm going to give you points there, Joe. The input device stack, that and tiling my XFCE windows around using my familiar keyboard shortcuts, I do miss a lot.
I forgot my third favorite thing, which is that no matter what you do, it just turns on. Like, plug it in, turns it on. Okay. Press any of the keys accidentally or the mouse or the touchpad, turns it on. Open the fucking thing up, turns it on. Great.
You're not supposed to turn off your computer, Joe. You're supposed to put it in sleep.
Yeah, I hate to point out, Joe, that Mac users just don't turn the computer off. That's why the power button's on the bottom.
Well, yeah. I still fastidiously turn mine off, just like I would all the time.
And how many times have you accidentally turned it back on again?
Weirdly, when I plug it in with it shut into a dock at work and then open the screen, it doesn't power on.
Oh.
But if it's not plugged in and I open the screen, it powers on.
But Chris, you don't even have to turn it off because unlike your machine at your last job, it won't lose like 30% of its battery overnight.
Yeah. Well, when I first got an XPS 13, I opened it up and it just started coming on. I was like, what the fuck? So I went into the BIOS and turned that off. And then when I got my M1 MacBook Air, the first thing I did was, right, how do I turn this feature off? Oh, you can't do that. Like, what the fuck, Apple? Give me some options, some choices. Oh, no, sorry, it's a Mac. You have none. Take it or fucking leave it.
Well, put it this way, Joe. I could also be sat here literally popping aneurysms in my brain because I had to use Copilot OS.
Yeah.
That was my choice. So I've made the right choice in the circumstance, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No. Between Windows and Mac, it's an absolute, there's just no question. Mac is clearly superior, but I will stick to GNU/Linux for now. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm not going to buy a Mac at the moment, but I'd be more tempted than I was before. All my personal computing outside of my work machine has remained Linux. I haven't suddenly drunk the Kool-Aid and I'm going off to Apple, all the things, but I am quite impressed, I have to say.
Well, let's return to this in a year's time when Chris is daily driving a Mac, both at work and at home.
Slippery slope.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, but until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been May.
See you later.